do have to be logged in as master or equivalent. The way I get to my field properties is I hold down my control key and I double click the field label, like so. So for instance, right here I'm looking at my account manager or key 4. Now your key 4 might be named something completely different. What I'm trying to show you is that every field has properties. Now I did that by I held down my control key, I double click the field label, and then I release my control key and I double click the label again, or indeed I can't right click, my mistake, I double click again. And where I'm going is security. Lots of stuff to play with here. Change the font color, the label color. But I can change the security to require data entry, and that will force GoldMine to prompt the user to fill that field. And you'll notice that when you require data entry, you no longer have the ability to change the read or update rights. Because think about it. If I'm requiring data entry, I need everybody to be able to look at this field. But just as an aside, if you are not requiring data entry, you can change the read and or update rights to be a GoldMine user or a GoldMine group. To be honest, the records on, or the fields on the contact record itself, you don't see a lot of required data entry here for whatever reason. The most popular ones actually are in the complete a phone call dialog. So when we think about our end users completing phone calls, maybe we want them to include this result code. Here I have a couple of sample results. There's a do not contact, a left voicemail, or we'll call it or they can have a successful call. We'll put it that way. You'll notice here that when I add items to my pick list, that if I put 2 forward slashes, I can actually add what's called a little rem, a little note as to what this code actually means. And everything beginning with and after the slashes is ignored when I actually go to select that item. For instance, if I select that, I just get the SUC or the LVM. And this is actually a little different than our field properties, because what we're doing is we want to make the result code filled out for every call, because let's imagine we're running some kind of call report on daily activity for our employees. So we need them to fill this out. So what we do is we actually bring up our field lookup and we go to setup. And here we're actually going to disallow blank input, and we're going to force a valid input. And the reason why we're forcing a valid is because we don't want to allow them the ability to just type in the codes by hand, just because there's potential for error. So we're disallowing blank, we're forcing valid, and we can even have the list pop up when the field is selected. So let's see if our change is taken. Here we go, disallowing blank, forcing valid. So now when an end user goes to complete a call, you'll notice, because that field's not filled out, it's going to complain. It's saying, hey, you need to fill this in. You can do the same thing with the activity code. So again, these activity code and result codes on the history object is actually optional. However, a lot of people like to use them to kind of segment what kind of call activity is being done. Certainly at that point it's very easy to run reports on number of calls per result. You can see how many voicemails are they leaving compared to actual successful calls, so on and so forth. You can even do the same thing with the reference field. So if you have a couple of just boilerplate kinds of calls people are making, usually people have a prospect call number 1, and then a prospect call number 2, and then we might have a disqualify call. And again, I can go to my setup, disallow blank, force valid. This pop-up you might want to use or not, because what you'll see is that, like in this case, I can't really get past this box without putting something in there. Now, do we know that we've left voicemail yet? Probably not. So you can kind of play with that one checkbox as you see fit. And there we go. Okay, so we'll talk about email templates. And I was actually going to talk about just general default email templates. But I think I'm just going to talk about them a little more generally. So when we think about an email template, we want to get to our email templates. We have to go to Document Templates. And this shows us all of our document templates, whether they be Word templates, Excel templates, or email templates. And you'll see here within your email templates, you can always see what your default new message template is, your default reply message template is, and your default forwarded messages template is. You'll see here that this is actually how I do my email signature. For instance, let me find somebody with a email address. When I go to create a new email, and the way I did that was I just single-clicked on my email link here. I find that to be a nice shortcut. Another nice shortcut, which I actually use more frequently, is to hold down the Control, Shift, and E keys all at the same time. Brings up a new email. So this default signature here is actually an email template. Why I like it to be an email template is because it allows me to select a font and a font size and colors and even insert a picture if I'd like. Whereas just attaching a signature text file obviously does not allow you that flexibility. So when I'm looking at my email signature template, and here it is, it was easy as right-clicking on my email templates and selecting New. I'm going to call this email signature number 2, because sometimes I worked for my father's company, so I'm going to just put this as my Hills Heating. And now, because it's an email template, I have all of my font tools available to me, so I can change the font. I'm a big fan of Book Antiqua. I don't know, it just looks so official. If I want, I can make it bold or italic. You know, hopefully you get the idea. When you're creating a brand new email template, keep in mind that whatever you put in your subject field is what the template is going to be named. So especially, certainly if we are creating a template to be sending out to like a bunch of prospects or a bunch of clients, we want to be mindful of how we name our template, because the receiving person will actually see that. In this case, because it's going to be a default template, don't worry about it, because it's kind of a special case. But just as a general rule of thumb, we don't want to name anything too weird in here in our subject line. I'm going to go ahead and save my template. And now I have my email signature number 2. So now it's a very easy expedient to right-click on my email signature number 2, and I can set this now as my default, say, new message, or reply, or forwarding message. And you'll see that as I do that, it changes the defaults here. So now if I go to send a new email, I get my new default signature. It's very common to see within document management centers. You'll notice here that I'm looking at Justin's email templates. So typically what you see is every GoldMine user will have their own set of signature templates. Very, very common to see. Actually, we do recommend it. It works a lot better than just attaching a text file, which is actually, if you go into your tools options email, and I believe it's under accounts, yeah, you can actually attach a text file, but that does not allow you to change the font or insert any fancy HTML. Incidentally, when you're creating a brand new email, all of your available email templates become available within your subject dropdown. So certainly, I'm not always working for Hills Heating. I'm mostly working for the Marks Group. So what I'd probably want to do is actually set my default back to my Marks Group email signature, and that was just right-click, set as default. And now when I'm creating a new email, if I'm not talking to a Marks Group client, I can drop down my subject line and select email sig2, for instance. Other good examples of email templates that I like to use would be things like driving directions to the office from the nearest highway, in case you have a lot of people asking about that, things of that nature. I'd like to talk a little bit about scheduling to GoldMine user groups. The idea being, when I schedule an item, I have a users tab. And what that allows me to do is schedule the same item to a bunch of users. Now, certainly, obviously, I guess, the most basic use of this would be for internal meetings. My users. And the way we actually use GoldMine user groups is I can actually double click my item here, and that adds everybody within my admin group, for instance. Of course I can, and that's really all scheduling a group does for you. It lets you easily add single users, which you're more than happy or welcome to do, rather, thusly.